Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier session related to chapter 4, unit 3 of business economics, we discussed about price and output determination related to a perfectly competitive environment and how the firms will be able to fix their prices. Of course, in a perfect competition, they are not price makers, they are price takers. So the market will fix the price, the firm has to just accept that. But certainly the firm can maximize its profits by operating at its supplier's equilibrium, and how that price determination and output determination happens in case of perfect competition we discussed in the earlier session, and also most importantly how a perfectly competitive firm might earn normal profits, in other words zero economic profit, or supernormal profit, in other words positive economic profits, or losses when the average total cost line is going below the average revenue line. Then naturally, cost being less than revenue, there will be supernormal profits. When the average total cost line just touches the average revenue line, that is where there will be normal profits. And when the average total cost line is above the average revenue, which means cost being more than revenue, the firm will enter into losses. And we also observed that in the long run, a perfectly competitive firm cannot make supernormal profits. It will be only able to make normal profits. But that was all about perfectly competitive environment and the firms operating in such an environment. Now let us move on to another type of market structure, that is monopoly. Monopoly means there is only one person to sell or alone to sell. That is a situation where there is only a single seller and there is no close substitute. Of course, just like perfect competition will not be there in real life, pure monopoly also never is found in real life. However, in general, throughout the world, the public utilities like transportation, water, electricity, sometimes we can find a bit of monopoly form of market. In general, monopolized by the government authorities themselves. But once again, that is all about real situation, which we don't need to always look at from the theoretical point of view only, because there will be so many variables that will be in play when we talk about reality. But when we talk about theory, these are all based on certain standardized assumptions and principles. That is why things look very straightforward in theoretical discussions rather than reality. So our focus will be naturally here to understand what is monopoly, what are the characteristics of monopoly, and most importantly, once again, the price and output determination, how it will happen in a monopolistic market. But before going to the technical aspects of price and output determination, let us understand the features of monopolistic market. One of the important features is that there is only a single seller of the product. That means only one firm is producing and supplying the entire product. That means the market demand is completely catered by only and only one organization. In other words, that means there is absence of competition. No competition is there for a monopolist. And there will be barriers to entry. There will be no free entry and exit. So there will be a lot of barriers to entry, which could be economic barriers, institutional barriers, legal or sometimes even artificial barriers created by the government itself. Whatever the barriers may be, the point is it is not easy to enter such type of market by anybody, because already there is only one and only all powerful player who will cater to the entire market. And naturally, because there is only one player, there are no close substitutes. Since the monopolist is having full control over the market supply of any product or service, and most importantly, monopolist is a price maker, not a price taker. In case of perfect competition, the firms there are price takers. In case of monopoly, they will be price makers. So whatever the monopolist would like to fix the price, there will be his choice to fix that price. We'll come to that. Whether it means monopolist can charge infinite price because he can make as much profit as he wants to make. Practically that would be not possible. First of all, the monopolist will be able to fix the price because he is a price maker, no doubt about it. But that does not mean monopolist can fix huge amount of price from which he can completely make abnormal profits. Why will that happen? We'll see that. But definitely one thing for sure is the cross elasticity of demand for monopolist's product and any other product is zero or very small. If it is perfect monopoly, it will be zero. Why? Because there is no substitute. When there is no substitute at all, the cross elasticity of demand will not exist. There is no cross elasticity at all. For cross elasticity, there should be some other product, right? At least. But there is no product. Even if there is some other product also, that is not a very close substitute. It's a very far off substitute for the monopolist products. That is why, very important technical point, cross elasticity of demand for the monopolist's product and any other product is zero or very small. That can be a question by itself. And also, price elasticity of demand for the monopolist product is less than 1. In other words, the products are not much elastic. Not much elastic. So as a result, how will be the demand curve for a monopolist? That will be a steep downward sloping demand curve, not a flatter one, because flatter curve means more elasticity of demand. Steeper curve means less elasticity of demand. That is why the demand curve for a monopolist will be a downward sloping curve, that too little steeper. Of course, each of these markets will indicate a particular type of demand curve. As we discussed in perfect competition, in that situation the demand curve was horizontal to x-axis. For simple reason, the price elasticity of demand was infinite there. But now in case of monopoly, the demand curve will be a normal demand curve only, downward sloping demand curve only, but it will be little bit steeper because the price elasticity is less than 1. But there will be price elasticity, that we have to keep in mind. That is the reason the monopolist cannot charge as much price as he wants. Okay, if he says that I will charge huge price, for example a product, from a consumer point of view who thinks it is worth 10 rupees, if a monopolist want to charge 1000 rupees for that, who is going to buy? The point is, okay, monopolist is a price maker. Does it mean he can fix such a price that finally nobody will buy? Then what is the point of doing business? That's why, though monopolist is a price maker, he has to honor and understand the elasticity of demand, particularly the price elasticity of demand for the product will be there. But it is lesser price elastic, that's okay. But there is price elasticity of demand. It is not zero, for sure. And cross elasticity of demand will be either zero or very small. So that is the nature of monopoly, very important. Technical points related to the demand curve of monopolistic market. Of course, since monopolist is only one guy who is having the complete control on the market, he will have market power. This is the word that monopoly is generally characterized with. A monopolist will have market power. What is that market power? He has the ability to charge a price above the marginal cost and also earn a positive profit. He can do that. That is the power monopolist exerts on the market. Because he is a price maker, he can charge a price above the marginal cost and earn a positive profit also. That is the nature of monopolistic market, and characteristics of monopoly will be like this. Of course, we need to keep in mind also, though there will be no substitutes, we have to also keep in mind there can be little bit far off substitutes. We cannot completely say that absolutely no substitutes at all are there. For example, railways is there. In India, Indian Railways is monopoly for operating the railway lines, of course. That also is going to break in the near future, because already the central government has mentioned that they are going to privatize some of the railway routes. Keeping that apart, as of now, definitely Indian Railways is monopoly on the railway system in this country. But does it mean there is no substitute to railway? Definitely not. If people don't get a train ticket, that's okay, they will travel by bus, or they will travel by some other modes of transport like car or taxi, whatever. But the point is, there is no close substitute for railways. At that price, at that comfort, at that timelines, there is no close substitute for railways. Does it mean there are no substitutes? No. Of course, somebody can travel by flight also. They can catch a plane and go to somewhere else in a very short period of time, boss, yes. But that is very expensive. A lot of people cannot afford it. So price definitely matters there. On the other side, for long journeys, generally people prefer definitely train journey. But because the monopolist has control on the market, he may not be able to cater to everybody. So the demand is there, but supply may not be as much as it is required. So always, that is why we see the reservations are all full. And then what people will do? They will shift to something else. They travel by bus or something else, which might not be that comfortable, but still they have no choice. The point is, we cannot say substitution is not at all there. There may be substitute, the little bit of substitution will be there, but there will be a lot of gaps in the chain of substitution. That is a point to be noted. For example, if one producer can exclude competition and controls the supply of a good, we can call it that producer as monopolist, a single seller. Of course, we have not reached that stage yet, but the signals are very clear. It is looking like that. I am not an astrologist, I don't know what might happen in future, but the signals from the current scenario are similar that Reliance Group, particularly the Jio brand, is going to be monopolist in certain areas of technology in India. Means what? They will exclude the competition. The competition cannot come near to them. They slash the prices so high, so much, that the competitors will not be able to make even normal profits also. So the competition will be eliminated over a period of time, and then monopolist will emerge. Like that, monopolies are made over a period of time. Telecom is a very classic example of that in India. The journey of telecom in India started with monopoly of government organization called the Department of Telecommunication. Later now we are calling it as BSNL. It was monopoly for decades, but that was under the control of government those days. Then the market was opened up, particularly after the 1991 liberalization, privatization and globalization policies were introduced by the central government then. So the telecom licenses were given to many players, and slowly from monopoly it was moving towards a perfect competition. But as I said, there is no perfect competition, but moving towards a perfect competition, because lots and lots of players were joining that service providers batch. So many new service providers started joining, and it has crossed double digits also. The number of service providers in India at one point of time was more than 10. Then once again, over a period of time, slowly from perfect competition, it started shrinking to itself towards monopolistic competition, which we are now experiencing, particularly very few brands and service providers are remaining now, which can be characterized as monopolistic competition. So from one extreme of monopoly, we moved to the other extreme of perfect competition. Both extremes cannot actually sustain. So from perfect competition, we are moving towards, already we have moved towards monopolistic competition. But now the signals are that maybe we are going towards monopoly once again. But if that happens, again that will not sustain for long time. So competition is good in the market. If not perfect competition, at least imperfect competition like monopolistic competition, even oligopoly. Maybe finally Jio and Airtel only will remain. That can be called oligopoly. These things can happen. But the point is, when a person or a particular producer has power, he controls the supply of a good or service, he can be called as a monopolist. The point of single seller should not be taken too literally. It's not like literally one only should be there. Even if one person more is there, we don't call it a monopoly. Not like that. It is not that rigid definition. If one person can influence the market so much, if one person controls the market so much, that is enough for that person to be called as a monopolist. Not necessary that there should be zero other forms. We cannot tell like that. There will be little bit substitutes, but those are so far off substitutes. For example, if Jio launches 5G network, there will not be any substitute for that in the immediate future. Because the other service providers are struggling with 4G itself. They are still going on 3G. Some of them are claiming to be 4G, but they are not working at that level. If suddenly 5G is launched by Jio, other service providers will not be able to catch with that upgradation. They will be there in the market, but still one player will dominate the market too much that all the other competition is slowly eliminated. That is how the monopolies are formed, and particularly in the field of telecom, we can see that forming in front of our eyes. So that is a sector which can be best taken as an example. Right from one extreme to another extreme it has went, and again it is going back to the old extreme. But reality will be somewhere between the extremes. It will never be perfectly monopoly also, it will never be perfect competition also. Perfect monopoly is only possible when the government controls it and it does not allow anybody to operate. For example, tomorrow somebody wants to start a nuclear power plant in India. Can they do that? They cannot, because that is not allowed for private sector to operate as of now. They cannot. There are a lot of barriers to entry. It means nobody can operate a nuclear power plant in India. If at all that has to be operated, it has to be from the government authorities only. Of course, they may take technical collaboration from private organizations, but a private company cannot. Again, private company does not mean legally private company, public company discussion. The companies in the private sector cannot make electricity, produce electricity through nuclear technology. Not possible. So monopoly is there in that. So government 100% control on any particular item is there, that is called monopoly. So that can be the only example of perfect monopoly, because in that case, because it is of mostly public goods, we cannot actually think from a commercial point of view. That is why all these theories will not really matter when government is only controlling the market. But if the private sector also has monopolistic tendencies, then that is a danger. That definitely gives rise to too much of market power to one organization, like as it is happening now to Jio. And it's only an example for understanding. Don't think somebody is supporting Jio also or against Jio also. We are not the ones to judge on them. We are only observers. What is happening and how can we apply that? If at all we can apply to the subject that we are learning is our limitation. We have to keep it there. There is no subjective opinion or judgment here. I am not judging what is happening. I am only expressing the tendency what it is leading to. That too, in my view. If it is wrong, In future, I will be happy. But if it is right, then definitely we are going to see in a very short future a big monopoly in the telecom sector. Whatever it is. But that is how they arise, the monopolies. How they will arise? When we say market, open, competition, liberalization, we are talking all of these things. But how monopolies can arise? The fundamental reason for monopoly is barriers to entry. A lot of other firms cannot enter the market. Why? Because many reasons. For example, now 5G, they want to enter. They have to invest lakhs of crores in that. Thousands of crores of investment is required in that new technology. And other firms do not have that much money. They are struggling to even survive now. So where from they will bring? That is also a barrier to entry. Capital is a barrier to entry. There is no sufficient capital to enter into that market now. So one of the barriers, that is financial barriers. Like that there will be so many other barriers. Legal barrier. Say for example somebody wants to manufacture nuclear power, they cannot do. Why? Because government said you cannot do. Government banned it. When government says you cannot enter, as simple as that. So barriers to entry can be many forms. There can be economical barriers, financial barriers, legal barriers. Any type of barriers will be there, but definitely there are barriers to entry when there is a monopoly. But there are many other reasons also. Let us quickly go through them. Nobody is going to ask you a question that what are the reasons for monopolies to arise. That situation of descriptive questions is not there, so you don't need to by heart these things, but just understand them in a generic manner. One thing can be the strategic control over a scarce resource or some technology like 5G for example. That will limit the access of other firms to these resources. There is control over some scarce resource. Control can be obtained by licenses or already they have some natural resources under them. Anyway, monopolies can be created because of them having a strategic control over scarce resources. For example, in the diamond business throughout the world, one of the topmost brands is Divi's from South Africa. They have a control on the diamond mines. So they have a control, because of that they dominate the entire world market. Again, I'm not saying monopoly means only one firm. There is no other diamond merchant in the world. There are. But when one firm is almost having majority of the market share, that is as good as a monopolist. So that's what happens. They might have some strategic control over the scarce resources, because of which over a period of time they turn into monopolies. Or they might get some control over a unique product that is difficult or costly for other companies to copy. Some unique product they have which others cannot copy. For a long period of time, Apple has enjoyed this because Apple introduced unique products which were never seen before by the other companies, and other companies took a lot of time to actually imitate them and copy them. Something like a tablet, like iPad, something like iPod for music. Earlier there was Walkman and all, but suddenly all the music was just coming into one small piece of device from which people could enjoy the music, iPod. That was a revolutionary technology that Apple has brought, unique product. Similarly, phones also, the touch technology was almost popularized by them. For others, it took a lot of time to copy and actually use the similar technology. So, some unique product definitely will have their own monopoly. Okay, keeping all these other things apart, which most of the other people have copied, but still, the Apple's operating system itself is completely unique. No other manufacturer of mobile phones can copy that. All others are maybe using Android based platforms, but Apple has its own platform which cannot be used by others. So that is uniqueness also for that. Like that, they will have some unique product with which they control the market or dominate the market. Once again, 100% monopoly is not possible. Domination is quite possible, which some of the companies enjoyed for a long time. Apple also enjoyed it for a long time because of their unique products. Then other reason could be the governments granting exclusive rights to produce and sell a good or service. That is government licenses. Of course, that comes with corruption, politics, and all, but still, doesn't matter. For a business person, if they have exclusive rights to produce and sell a good or service, that means he only can do that, nobody else can do that. That firm will exercise monopoly on that particular good or service because government authorized only them to sell. Others cannot sell. So that is licenses which are given to the producers for offering goods or services to the market. Through the licenses, they will have exclusive rights. Same logic applies to 3G, 4G, this also. For example, though it is in the government sector, BSNL did not get 4G license even in recent past, whereas the private providers got license of 4G long back. So, whoever the government wants to give licenses, they only will get the license. If the government says, I will give license of 5G only to Jio, if Airtel keeps on begging, I also want a license, I also want a license, if the government says, if I will not give you, what Airtel can do? They cannot do anything because that is government's power to grant licenses to whomever they want. And this is where the old 2G spectrum scams and all also were there because those licenses were granted to only specific people. And why they were granted, how they were granted, there will be a lot of political connections in that and collections also in that, unfortunately. But what happens because of that is few firms will have exclusive rights to produce and sell a good or service. Others will not have a advantage. Very few will have advantage because government favors them. Why it favors them is a different story, but that's what it does. If it does, then that could create monopolies. And patents and copyrights, of course, that is also another reason because they have innovated something new and patents are there, copyrights are there which are protected. So others cannot use it. Intellectual property rights, these are called. So that will be one thing where others cannot use the same technology. For example, imagine if a vaccine is invented for corona in near future. Whoever invents it, whichever company invents it, are they going to give that formula free to somebody? Definitely not. Others, if they want to use the same formula, they have to pay money to them. So they will sell their intellectual property to others and they will exert the control on the market naturally. So they will have so much of innovation and new technologies with them that they control most of the market. To take an example in Indian context, the seeds market, the seeds and fertilizers market in India is having a lot of control exerted by very few multinational organizations like Monsanto, like Bayer, some others are also there, like DuPont, for example, because they have some innovative products. Their seeds, what they have innovated and selling now, are something which others cannot manufacture. So that patents will give them power so that others cannot use their intellectual property. So with that protection, they will exert market power, monopolistic power on the market. And sometimes business combinations also will create monopolies or cartels, though illegal in most countries. Cartels and business combinations where farmer competitors cooperate on pricing or market share. When they will come together and they will form a big monopoly. We will take an example which was a flopped example, so let us not get into that. Let us take an imaginary situation. Imagine whether, if at all, not happened, will not happen also. Imagine Coca-Cola and Pepsi merge with each other. If they do so, how big that company will be? Huge, no? And will there be any competition for that? There is nobody who can compete with that huge corporation. If at all, those two companies will merge together, they will have almost 100% market share in the entire world, in the soft drink market and mostly the snack food industry also, particularly in India. So, business combinations create monopolies also. Imagine tomorrow Microsoft and Google will merge. Imagine, they will not. And generally the US government will not allow that also because that is against competition, right? So, in general, as far as at least policies are concerned, the governments will not encourage monopolies to be formed. So, in America, for example, there are particular statutes called antitrust laws, which prohibit big mergers and acquisitions if that merger is going to create any monopolistic power of one company over the market, at least in theory. In reality, does it really work? Almost no. Almost as good as no. Why? Because if you look at some of the industries, there are some companies which exert almost 100% control on the entire market, entire world market. Almost. Once again, not 100%, almost. Say, for example, processors. Yes, there are many processors like AMD, Athlon, and all. There are others, but who exerts the most of the control of processors in the world? Intel. Intel processors are used almost in the entire world market of computers, particularly personal computers. So that much power they have, that much market power they exert. And if, for example, Intel and AMD wants to merge with each other, then they will have 100% control on the world. That will be biggest danger. Just imagine, just for imagination purposes, Google, Microsoft, Apple, if they merge and if they form a new company, that company is going to be as good as the entire world's power is with that company only. And governments cannot allow that, should not allow that, they will not allow that. So, business combinations sometimes create a monopoly. That is one of the reasons why business combinations also will happen, even in social media. If you look at the past history, why Facebook wanted to buy WhatsApp? It bought out already WhatsApp. Now WhatsApp belongs to Facebook. Why it wanted that? Because it wanted more power on that social media sphere. So business combinations will definitely create more power on the market. That is why these mergers and acquisitions generally happen, and that creates very few players finally left, and then they become more and more powerful. As of now, we can take examples in Indian context. Say, for example, Uber is there, Ola is there, particularly in cab industry. There are many other, Meru, other dot cab, so many others are there. But major players are two, Uber and Ola. Imagine if they both combine, if Uber buys out Ola or Ola buys out Uber, whatever happens, then that will be the monopoly, that will be exerting too much power in the entire market. So such things generally will not be allowed, should not be allowed by the governments. But if they are allowed over a period of time, very few firms, majorly one firm will have most control of the market, and that creates a lot of market power, which is not good for consumers also, society also. That is one of the other reasons why monopolies might exist or come into existence. And some other things like large startup costs, that will be a barrier to entry naturally. If you want to start, for example, let us say now somebody wants to start an oil refinery business in India. Already there are very few oil refiners, like Reliance. Once again, Reliance India is one of the biggest oil refiners in the entire world actually. The biggest oil refinery plant in the entire world is in India only, that is in Jamnagar. And others like SR company has oil refinery, and government companies or public companies, public sector companies like HPCL, BPCL, Indian Oil Corporation have their own oil refineries, and there are so many small oil refineries like Mangalore Oil Refinery and all. But the point is, if some private sector person, suddenly some petroleum engineer who has just qualified, very enthusiastic to start one industry, can he just go and start an oil refinery of himself? Is it easy? It's going to be very difficult, because that is extraordinarily costly, and that much sophisticated technical know-how and all, he cannot buy, he cannot afford. So he cannot enter into the market. No new players can enter into the market. Very few players only will be there. That will be dominated by, once again, one major firm. So that will have huge setup costs, which discourage others to enter, because of which one firm will enjoy the monopoly. That's a big barrier to entry, the large startup costs. Even for software companies also, it is not that large, but still the startup costs to be at least avoided and encouraged, startup costs to be avoided and startups to be encouraged. That is why a lot of government initiatives like T-Hub in Hyderabad, those are all there for what? Any new person, new innovator or entrepreneur who wants to start a business, they can go and start up their business with the least cost because government supports them. So that is to encourage new innovation and competition. That is okay for service sector, particularly like software sector or this type of technological based, not hardware but software related things, app developments, software. These are okay. That they just require mostly the brain than money. But what about manufacturing companies? Somebody wants to start a computer manufacturing company. Is it possible? Somebody just like that can start. It is very difficult and very huge cost will be incurred. So nobody will be actually able to start that. That is why the existing companies, existing players will continue their monopoly power. That's what happens in case of huge startup costs, particularly for certain types of industries. And sometimes natural monopoly also arises when there is larger economies of scale. Larger economies of scale are there, because of which naturally over a period of time the monopoly arises. Economies of scale we know already. When the scale increases, that means the level of activity keeps on increasing over a longer period of time. The cost per unit will decrease so much that that firm will be able to sell their products also at lower cost to attract more and more customers. USA's Walmart can be taken as the classic example of that. Walmart is the company which has the highest sales in the world, revenues in the world, revenues, not profits. How is that possible? How much power they have on the retail market of America? It is very enormous. But how they could achieve that? Because of larger economies of scale, they could achieve that. And naturally that monopoly arises over a period of time when almost one single firm can produce or cater to the entire industry's requirements. That too at a very lower unit cost. Then naturally the monopoly will arise over a period of time. But that is not again good always. Sometimes it is good if that saves money for the consumers, and other side of it is bad. Why? Because one player or very few players will have too much of power on the entire market. So that's what happens in case of natural monopoly over a period of time. Due to the larger economies of scale, natural monopoly can be enjoyed. That can be taken as some other examples, but I think nowadays particularly these are going to be really not that monopolies, but yes, because of economies of scale that might happen. Imagine if Jio's subscriber base goes almost up to 80 crores people of India, then almost entire India using their service, then they almost automatically emerge like natural monopoly. So without any other reasons also, naturally monopolies can arise when there are large economies of scale. And another reason could be the goodwill or reputation that is enjoyed by a firm. There will be some trust factors. In the sense, people trust a brand, so that will create a good impact, and they will enjoy more power on the market than others, because others cannot compete with such a big name in front of them. There is a giant which is standing there with huge reputation, and a small player cannot compete with that big name. That enormous goodwill also creates monopoly. And legal restrictions also will be there definitely, as we discussed about licenses and barriers to entry legally. A lot of regulatory requirements will be there. So they will discourage the entry of new firms without being specifically prohibited. Nobody will stop the people, don't come and don't start the industry, nobody will tell. But if you really want to go and start an industry, let us say a manufacturing industry, is it easy? Is it easy? It is going to be very, very difficult. So many legal requirements have to be fulfilled. All the types of government authorities will come and they will have their own, I would say, power to harass the entrepreneur. People from pollution department will come, fire safety will come, labor department people will come, police will come, and other departments depending on that sector they will come. Health and safety people will come. Food, if it is food related sector, food inspectors will come. Who not? Almost from this municipal authorities will come suddenly, local authority people will come. Everybody will try to discourage the entry of new firms in their own way. That happens normally in particularly developing countries like India, where the requirements are too many, the red tape is too long, and it is very difficult to enter into the market for new firms. So what happens because of that? Because of that, existing firms enjoy monopoly naturally, because no new person is coming and competing with them. That is there. And sometimes another reason for monopoly could be the firms using predatory tactics. Like what? Predatory pricing or limit pricing intended to do away with the existing or potential competition. Once again, classic example can be Jio only. When all the other service providers were charging heftily for data, they started offering data, particularly mobile data, at a very, very low price, which others cannot actually afford. So what happens? Slowly, existing and potential competition will be eliminated. Those are called predatory tactics. And Reliance is very popular for that, which is one of the reasons for its success. And of course, we are not talking any illegal things here. Within the legal framework, within the regulatory framework only, these are business tactics. When a company is making too much profits, good profits over a period of time, and it has emerged to be one of the biggest companies of India and one of the biggest companies of the world, how it will happen? Just like that. It will have a lot of tactics, lot of strategies, different types of, let's say, policies they will adopt, and ultimately they maximize their profits, they maximize their wealth. That's what they want to do. Any business wants to do that. Making profit is not a crime. That is not something which can be like said as, oh, he's cheating. No. You want to call it cheating is a different story. But that's an opinion, once again, judgment. So as I am telling now, we are not here to judge that. We are only here to know what it is. That's all. Judging is at a personal capacity anybody can do according to their own experience, knowledge and perspective. But the point is, monopolies will emerge over a period of time because of several reasons like this. But as I said already, as it was already mentioned, in real life, pure monopolies are not common, because generally monopolies are not encouraged. They are either regulated or prohibited. But yes, one producer may dominate the supply of a good or group of goods. Yes, that is okay. That is there. Like that, many monopolies, we can say that they are dominating the market. Not that they are only 100% one and only provider in the market, not like that. So these are the various reasons for creation or generation of monopolies. And for understanding monopoly, particularly in relation to public utilities like transport, water, electricity generation, etc., those are all for government entities like Indian Railways. As I said, this is government monopoly over production of nuclear power also, for example, as we already took that. Those are different. Those are not commercial reasons for which the monopolies exist. Those are for public safety and public service reasons. But in the private sector, if the monopolies emerge because of these reasons over a period of time, that will create enormous market power for them, which is not good for the market also, not good for the consumers also. Immediately it may not harm, but over a period of time it will have its own disadvantages. We'll look at them also later stage. Now coming to the technical aspects of monopoly, how will be the monopolist revenue curves? Revenue curve will be like this for monopoly. And as we have discussed earlier, the demand curve itself is the average revenue curve, and marginal revenue is naturally lower than the average revenue at all stages, and sometimes it can even enter into the negative territory. But when we say monopoly, because it is assumed that there is only one producer, assumed that, not real, that there is only one producer, then demand curve is same as market demand curve, because when there is only one producer, market demand curve and firm's demand curve, both are one and the same, because firm is market, market is firm, both are same. And what does the market demand curve exhibit? As we know already, the total quantity of product that buyers will offer to buy at each price. That's what is demand curve, we know that. and that is the quantity exactly which the monopolist will be able to sell at every price. So simply speaking, the market demand curve itself is going to become the average revenue curve for the monopolist, and this is the average revenue and marginal revenue curves, how they appear in monopoly. This also we discussed earlier. For any other type of imperfect competition, they will be like this only. For any other type of, not only monopoly, but only difference is what, whether this demand curve is steeper or whether it is little flatter, that might change, but definitely the way the demand curve is going to be the same. So demand curve is nothing but average revenue curve, and marginal revenue curve is below that, and at some point in time it was even going negative, as you can observe from figure number 23, which is nothing new. When we discussed the concepts of revenue, the same curve was there also. Then if you look at this same graphical representation into a tabular representation, this is how the average revenue, total revenue and marginal revenue can be just once again estimated or taken as illustration. When quantity sold is 0, price is average revenue, we are talking here, that is 10 rupees, if at all. That means nobody is ready to buy at that price. If the price is reduced a little bit to 9.5, one quantity was able to be sold. Same way, if price is further reduced to 9 rupees, then 2 units can be sold. This is nothing but a normal price and demand relationship. Same thing. So price was reducing, so naturally the quantity sold, demand, because in this case for monopolist, demand supply both are same. Whatever the market demands, the monopolist only will be able to supply that. So the point is, average revenue is going to be decreasing when the supplier wants to sell more and more units in the market. Then if you want to find out total revenue, you just multiply the average revenue with the quantity sold. For example, what is the total revenue of selling 7 units? Then you multiply 7 into 6.5, that comes to around 45.5. Like that, total revenue can be calculated. But if you observe the total revenue, it has been increasing till it reached 50. But then it started declining. From 50, it started declining. That means if the price is 4.5 and if the quantity sold is 11, the total revenue was only 49.5. Then why should we sell that 11th unit? That doesn't make sense. That means the producer should stop at 10 units only. Enough. That is where the total revenue is maximum, and marginal revenue was still positive at least. Marginal revenue was positive. Marginal revenue itself is negative. That doesn't make sense to sell one more unit, because by selling one more unit you are actually getting negative return. So 11th unit is ruled out. That will be there only in table. Nobody will sell that. Then what is marginal revenue? As we know, the difference in total. Once again, whatever the word it may be, marginal and total, concept is same. Marginal product, total product. Marginal cost, total cost. Marginal revenue, total revenue. The sum of the marginal is always total, and the difference between two total revenues or two totals between two units is always marginal. So for example, if you want to take what is the marginal revenue of selling 5th unit, take total revenue of 5 units, 37.5, minus total revenue of 4 units, 32. 37.5 minus 32, that is 5.5. That is marginal revenue. That is a concept of marginal which we already know. And nothing is new in this so far. This is same price and demand relationship, the same total revenue, marginal revenue, average revenue relationship. There is nothing new in this concept of average revenue and marginal revenue of a monopoly. But yes, what is the essence of all this we can take out. First point, average revenue, marginal revenue both are negatively sloped. That means downward sloping curves. Yes. Yeah. This is one more technical point. Don't practical, it will not happen. The slope of the marginal revenue curve is twice that of the average revenue curve. So, if you look at this, the slope of marginal revenue curve is twice that of the average revenue curve. That means the marginal revenue curve is going to cut the average revenue curve and y-axis equally. Exactly, it is equally cutting this distance between average revenue curve and y-axis. You can just observe that visually here. So this marginal revenue curve is exactly cutting. So this area, this entire area and this area will be same because it is cutting exactly equally the distance between the average revenue and price. This and this, if it is exactly, this is the center point of that. That is the meaning of it. So marginal revenue curve is cutting the average revenue and y-axis equally. That means it cuts the horizontal line between y-axis and average revenue into two equal parts. Each of them can be asked as a question. So that is one thing which can be observed in monopoly only. And average revenue cannot be zero naturally. Why? Because price cannot be zero. But marginal revenue can be zero also, even negative also, and we know that. Nothing new in that. Marginal revenue was negative here already. So it could be zero also, negative also. It can cut the x-axis. Of course, there is a problem or I would say mistake in this graph. This average revenue cannot touch x-axis. This is not possible. It will stop somewhere here, that's all. It has to be just stopped somewhere here. Just like that, if it is there, that's okay. It cannot touch the x-axis. That will be wrong. If it is touching x-axis, that means what? Price is zero. That doesn't make sense. So don't think this touching of x-axis is going to happen. No, it is not possible. It's only just depicted in the graph. That's not really correct also. So these are the points to be noted from the relationship of marginal revenue, average revenue in relation to monopoly. All points are same, nothing new here. Only one new point is what? In case of monopoly, the slope of marginal revenue is twice that of average revenue curve. That is one point to be remembered. That means what? Marginal revenue curve is exactly cutting the area between average revenue curve and y-axis into equal parts. It is cutting the horizontal line between y-axis and average revenue into two equal parts. That is a very important point. Other than that, remaining things we already know. Both are negatively sloped. Average revenue cannot be zero. Marginal revenue could be zero also or negative also. That is fine. Now this is about revenues concept, which we already have discussed in unit 1 of chapter 4. And cost concepts we already know in chapter 3 itself. What we should do now? We should bring them together. That is where profit maximization can happen for a monopolized firm, and that is what we call it as equilibrium for the monopoly firm. So, in general, when we look at competitive markets, because they are price takers, the competitive market players will be only concerned about determination of output. Price is not in their hand. But that is not the case with monopolist. The monopolist has to determine the price also and output also, because he is not a price taker, he is a price maker. So while a monopolist takes a decision, he has to take both on price as well as output. Of course, the concepts are same, where it will be the best point of equilibrium. Those are same. What will be that? Related to average cost curve, marginal cost curve. Those are same. Cost things are same, because cost is internal. It has nothing to do with market. But what changes in market level is revenue conditions. They will differ. The way average cost, marginal cost will be there are same, whether it is a perfectly competitive firm or a monopolistic firm. But revenue conditions change. Naturally, in case of perfectly competitive market, we have seen revenue curves to be horizontal to the x-axis. Here they are not. They are sloping downwards from left to right, having negatively sloped revenue curves. Both average revenue also, marginal revenue also are going downwards from left to right. That changes. Costs will not change. So that's what we have to understand and identify in case of monopoly. Of course, any firm will try to reach that level of output where the profits are maximum. And that's what we call it as equilibrium level of output. And how to reach that equilibrium output and price in the short run, how to reach that, what is that, is what we are going to discuss in the coming pages. First, let us focus on short run equilibrium. Short run equilibrium, conditions are all same once again. What are the conditions here? Same conditions, where the marginal cost cuts the marginal revenue, where the marginal cost is equivalent to marginal revenue. That is the equilibrium output always, and that too the marginal cost should cut the marginal revenue curve from below. That is what is happening here also. So the same conditions will be there. What are the two conditions? The twin conditions. Marginal cost should be equal to marginal revenue, and marginal cost curve should cut the marginal revenue curve from the below. Both conditions are same, but only way the shape of marginal revenue curve is different. That's all. So what is happening in this graph? Observe this graph carefully. These type of questions also can be asked in the exam. By looking at it, you should understand what type of market structure we are talking about. We are talking about a monopoly, that too in short run. Of course, it is only just telling us quantity, and whatever this E point is there, that is the equilibrium point where the marginal cost line is cutting the marginal revenue line from the below. So naturally, if you draw like a line here, what is the quantity that they should manufacture and sell? Q. At what price they can sell? Take the same thing above. This is the price, right? Why? Because average revenue is nothing but price. So this is the price. Simple. So the price at which the monopolist has to sell is P. The quantity that monopolist has to sell is Q. That's all. So this is the price P and this is the quantity Q. Equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity for a monopolist can be identified like this. Conditions are same, only the graphs have changed. Earlier, just for remembering purposes, the marginal revenue curve and average revenue curve both were horizontal to x-axis, and marginal cost curve was going like this, or it could be going like this also. So we said this is not equilibrium, this is equilibrium, because the marginal cost line should cut the marginal revenue line from the below. So that was earlier situation, perfectly competitive. Now it is not the case. Marginal revenue line is downward sloping. Marginal cost as usual is a U-shaped curve, going down first and then going up. But where marginal cost curve is cutting marginal revenue curve, that is the equilibrium quantity. And at that quantity, whatever is the average revenue, which is nothing but price, that is what is P, or equilibrium price. Once that is determined, the price is determined by the monopolist, like this, and it is not determined by the market, by the way. Unlike perfect competition, monopolist determines the price himself. But how he will determine? By taking equilibrium quantity first. Then he will go for price determination. Okay, he has determined the price. Is he making profits or losses? How do we know that? Once again, the same logic. Depends upon whether the average total cost is above or below the average revenue. If that is the case, whether profit will occur or loss will occur, we can observe from this graph. It's only about knowing whether they are making profits or losses. This is not any decision making. Decision making is this. This is where equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity will be decided. Once it is decided, whether monopolist is making profit or loss will depend upon average total cost, naturally. In the short run, what possibilities are there? Of course, E is already there here, same. What is E? You have to understand each point. E means that is where marginal cost curve has cut the marginal revenue curve from the below, so that is the equilibrium point at which Q output is going to be produced and sold. Fine. What was the price at that? Because EA is the point on average revenue, the one which is horizontal to that, P is going to be the price. Okay. Now when OP is the price, and OQ is the quantity, naturally what is going to be the total revenue? Total revenue is going to be this. This is total revenue. What is that? OPAQ is going to be the total revenue. That is total revenue. If you want profit, we need to know total cost. So how do we know total cost? Where the average total cost line is cutting this. So exactly where is it? The point of average total cost line is cutting our vertical line which we have drawn, that is AQ, that is at point B. That means what is going to be the cost per unit, for example, that is going to be BQ, cost per unit, that is. What was the price per unit? AQ, which is nothing but OP also, same. What is the cost per unit? BQ. Naturally, what is profit per unit? That is AB. What is the total profit? That is this profit area. That is CPAB is the profit area. And what is the total cost? Total cost is this area. So, OCBQ is the total cost area. When there is total revenue of OPAQ and a total cost of OCBQ is only there, naturally the remaining area is all profit. And why is this profit occurring? Observe that visually. If you observe that visually, that will be easier. Why is it happening? Because average total cost is below the average revenue line. If it is there below the average revenue line, then profit might occur. How to calculate profit is different, but profit occurs then. That is the total profit in this case. CPAB is the total profit. That's all. Will monopolist or can monopolist incur losses also? Possible. Depends upon their cost. No? Profit or loss does not depend upon just price. It also depends upon price as well as cost. So there is no guarantee or certainty that monopolist will always earn supernormal profit or economic profit. It depends upon the demand and cost conditions also. So there is a possibility. We are not saying he will make losses. There is a possibility that where average total cost is above the average revenue. Look at this graph. Average revenue line is here. Where is average total cost? It is somewhere going above it. It is not even going below it. It is going above it somewhere. Which means the average total cost is above the average revenue line. That means there are losses, naturally. What are the losses? That can be found out same way. Profit or loss you should be able to find out from the graphs. First thing first, sequentially you have to follow the logic. First thing first, what is the quantity? Same thing. Where the marginal cost line cuts the marginal revenue line. That happened at Q. That means the quantity is supposed to be Q. So, at this quantity, what was the price? Where this line is touching the average revenue is price. That means the price is P. But cost is how much? So, what is now? Let us say total revenue. Total revenue is this much. This is total revenue, which is nothing but OPBQ. That is total revenue. Okay, we have total revenue. Cost, where is it? Short run average total cost, which is way above it. So you increase this straight line further up to where it touches the average total cost line. Now A point is where it has touched. That means what is AB here? That is loss per unit. Loss per unit. So when you have a total revenue of this much, total this is area, and total cost of this much, what is the total cost? ACOQ is the total cost. ACOQ is the total cost. So when total cost is ACOQ, but total revenue is only OPBQ, naturally the remaining portion CPAB is going to be loss. That is how loss can be determined also in monopolist, in a monopolistic market. Naturally, see, if you observe them visually, that will be also very easy. See, always profits or losses when they are happening, average revenue is always like this. Earlier, short term average total cost line went below that. Now this has went above that, right? Now let us see other thing also where it will touch it. If it touches it, then there will not be profit or loss. That will be naturally the third scenario, which happens in the long run. So here, when there is a loss of per unit loss of AB or a total loss of ACPB, the question comes, should the monopolist shut down? No, he will not shut down. He doesn't need to shut down, because definitely he is making losses, but at the same time his average revenue, that is price, is not less than his average variable cost. If so, everybody has to shut down, whether it is monopolist or anybody. If he is covering average revenue of more than average variable cost, though it is not shown in the graph, conceptually if the price is more than the average variable cost, then it is okay, because at least some portion of the fixed costs will be covered by him. That is why he will not shut down normally. If by chance he is not able to cover, if he is not able to cover the average variable cost also, then for temporary purposes, temporarily he will shut down. Later he will come back when he is able to sell something at that price. So why the average revenue is not able to be covering the average variable cost? Because nobody is buying at that price. He has to reduce further, and that price is so low that average variable cost is also not covered. If such situations happen, then he will shut down. But otherwise, normally monopolist will not have that bad situation, because he has control on the market. He will never take the average revenue or price below the average variable cost. Never he does that. But yes, can monopolist make profits in the short run? He can. Can monopolist make losses in the short run? He can. Both are possible. When he makes profits, when average total cost is going somewhere below the average revenue line. Where he will make losses when the average total cost line is going above the average revenue line, he will make losses. These are the two situations that can happen in short run. In the long run, what happens? Because in the long run, since he has a monopolistic power over the market, he can be able to adjust his plant size in such a way that the long run average cost curve will exactly be touching the average total cost or average revenue. Okay, that is when profits are made. So in the long run, if at all he makes profits, once again the same thing as the first scenario, that was figure number 25, is repeated here. That means what happened? The average total cost is going below the average revenue. That means profits are occurring. No difference between figure number 25 and figure number 27. Only difference is that was for short term, this is long term. So in this scenario, also he is making profits, and he can make profits because he can adjust his plant size in such a way that his average total cost will be lower than his average revenue. And he sometimes even can produce at suboptimal scale also. Suboptimal means not optimal scale. He need not produce at the optimum level. He can produce at suboptimum scale also. In other words, he need not reach to the minimum of the LAC curve. He can stop at any point on the LAC where his profits are maximum. So as we have seen earlier, average total cost, wherever it is lowest, let us say average total cost, this will be the best way of producing, right? So this should be the quantity that he should produce according to the cost theory that we know, the lowest possible average total cost. But is he producing that much? No. He is producing at suboptimal scale. Where he has stopped here only. That means at Q only he has stopped. Why? Because that is where he can maximize profits. Why is he able to maximize profits at that point? Because he got a total revenue of AP OQ, and the total cost is only BCOQ, and he is still making a profit of AP CB. That is going to be the maximum profit, and that will occur where we know that already. That is when the marginal cost line cuts the marginal revenue line from the below. Always the quantity for maximizing profit will be calculated in the same way. So because it is cutting at E, optimal quantity will be Q for maximizing profits. Only from cost perspective, he should have manufactured this much. But he will not do that. He will run at suboptimal levels. He can stop at any point on long run average cost curve or average total cost curve. This is as per his profit maximizing strategy, not according to the market. According to his own strategy, he can stop at any point on the long run average cost curve where the profits are maximum. So he will make profits in the long run. In the short run, he can make profits also, losses also. But unlike we have seen in the case of perfect competition, if at all, of course, that is not mentioned here, which is not a possibility also. Technically speaking, but practically that is possible. Just imagine, if at all, this is average revenue line and average total cost is touching it exactly, then there will be no profit, no loss situation. That means zero economic profit can be made by monopolist also. When he can make losses, as given here, in the short run, why can't he make zero profit? He can very well do that. So that is also a possibility, though it is not mentioned. Only two possibilities are mentioned here, but practically all the three are possible. In short run, anybody, whether it is perfect competition or monopoly or monopolistic competition, in short run, any firm can make profits also, losses also, or supernormal profits also. So profits means normally when we say supernormal profit is this, where there is a profit, economic positive profit. When we say just profit, that means zero economic profit. That is where average total cost will be touching, tangential to the average revenue line. It is not given here, but it is also possible in monopoly. Even it is possible in perfect competition, or for that matter any type of market. In short run, anything is possible because of the cost structure of the organization. Simple logic. Once again, if you remember the logic, that will be easier. Average total cost line going below average revenue creates supernormal profit. Average total cost line touching the average revenue line creates normal profit or zero economic profit. Average total cost line going above the average revenue line, like here, then it will create losses. That's all. These are the three possibilities in the short run. In the long run, as we have observed in the perfect competition, the firm in perfect competition cannot make profits in long run. They will make only normal profits, that means zero economic profits in the long run. But monopolist with his power can make profits in the long run, because once again the average total cost or the long run average cost curve will go below the average revenue in the long run. He will do like that because he can reduce the costs because of increasing his scale, and he can adjust his plant size in such a manner that he will maximize profits and minimize his costs. And so conclusion for a long run point of view is that in the long run, perfectly competitive firm cannot make profits. No, not possible. They can make at the maximum zero economic profits or normal profits. But in the case of monopolist, in the long run, they will make profits or supernormal profits are possible here. They are not possible in case of perfect competition. That is the difference in long run. As far as short run is concerned, there is no difference technically speaking. All are same. Only difference is what? The revenue curves. There, in case of perfect competition, those are all horizontal. Here, those are like this. All remaining things are same. Nothing different in short run. Any of them can make normal profits also, supernormal profits also, losses also in the short run, irrespective of the type of market structure. In the long run, they are completely different. In the long run, perfectly competitive firm can never make supernormal profits, and in the long run, monopolist will generally make supernormal profits because that is his power. If he is not making, what is the point of being a monopolist? That is about price determination and output determination in case of monopolistic market. Now let us look at one more particular area or concept which only is applicable for the monopolist. Earlier it was not there for perfectly competitive market. Only for monopoly this facility will be there. That is called price discrimination. So what is this price discrimination? Simply speaking, charging different prices for different types of customers. For example, if you go to a doctor, maybe you will charge a higher fees from rich patient and lesser fees from poor patient. Even for home consumption, for example, electricity companies will charge a lesser rate per unit, and for industrial and commercial consumption, they will charge more. That means they are discriminating in prices. Those are all examples of price discrimination. Simply speaking, when a particular commodity is sold to different buyers at two or more different prices for reasons not associated with differences in cost. If it is because of difference in cost, then it's a different story. But not because of cost. Product is same, service is same, cost is same, but the organization is selling the same product or service in different markets at different prices. If that is happening, that is called price discrimination. Price discrimination can be exerted only by monopolist. Why will you do that? Naturally, ultimate objective to earn abnormal profits. Of course, that may be due to any other reason also sometimes, but still, for a commercial entity being a monopolist and doing price discrimination, that will be generally for profits. But again, not necessarily always it is because of profits, because of fairness also sometimes there can be price discrimination for different types of customer groups. There are some other examples of price discrimination which are also given here. For example, railways can charge different prices for high value goods than the low value goods, and some countries might dump the goods at very low prices in the foreign markets. Sometimes universities also, coaching centers also, educational institutions also charge tuition fees differently from different types of groups of students. Same way, different types of charges can be there for phone calls. For example, off-peak time rate is different, peak time rate is different. Numerous examples can be taken for price discrimination. The concept of price discrimination, we see that every day almost. But does it mean always it is monopoly? Please don't do that. As far as theory is concerned, price discrimination is possible only for monopolist. But in reality, most of the organizations will try to do price discrimination even though they are not really technically monopolists. Say for example, Toyota cars in India are priced very high compared to the same Toyota cars anywhere else in the world. It is not due to cost only, it is due to the perception of the people. In India, Toyota is a very luxurious brand. In other countries, that is a very basic brand. It's as good as like buying a cycle. In most of the other countries, buying a Toyota car means it's like buying a bicycle. That's all. That much basic it is. It is not some luxury brand in other countries. But in India, Toyota means too much. It's like, wow, luxury brand. That they want to keep that name. So they price their products very high in India compared to other countries, relatively speaking. Like that, just because Toyota does price discrimination, can we say Toyota is monopoly? No, not in that sense. Don't try to bring reality to theory. That is where the problem comes. Theory is theory. Reality is only when we discuss it, it is for examples, only for understanding purposes. If you want to bring reality to theory, it will backfire and it will cause a lot of confusion. Unnecessarily wrong answers will come out, even from examination point of view. So, price discrimination is there in many cases what we see. But in general, in case of perfect competition, come back to theory. In case of perfect competition, price discrimination is not possible because sellers have no influence on the market price. Because of that reason, perfect competition cannot have price discrimination. But in order to have price discrimination, it requires an element of monopoly so that the seller can influence the price of his product. That is when price discrimination is possible, first of all. So theoretically speaking, when price discrimination is possible, when there is an element of monopoly, then only price discrimination is possible. What are the conditions? Very, very important theoretical points, conceptually very important, and questions can be asked in each of them. What are the conditions for price discrimination? When is price discrimination possible? Only under the following conditions. First of all, the seller should have some control over the supply of his product. He should have control on the market. In other words, he should have price setting power. In other words, monopoly power should be there. Of course, not necessarily absolute monopoly, but some monopolistic power should be there. That is first condition. Second condition is that the seller should be able to divide his market into two or more sub-markets. For example, Toyota has divided each country as one market. That is one type of division. Or sometimes the division can be in the form of region. They may call it, let us say, APAC, Asia Pacific region. Or they may call it sometimes EMEA. That is like Europe, Middle East and Africa. Different regions they will divide, and they might charge different prices in the different regions, whatever the examples may be. But definitely the seller should be able to divide the market into two or more sub-markets. That is another very important condition. And third and most important condition here is the price elasticity of product should be different in different sub-markets. That is the main point. If the product has the same price elasticity in all markets, then the monopolist cannot get any advantage of price discrimination. The price elasticity of the product should be different in different markets. So first of all, there should be different markets or sub-markets which the monopolist can divide into. And then those markets should exhibit different price elasticity for the product that is sold by the monopolist. So where the monopolist will fix a high price for his product, naturally, common sense. Which market he will fix a high price for his product? Where the price elasticity is low. That means where the price elasticity is less than 1. Because when there is less price elasticity, even though he fixes a high price for his product, that is not going to significantly reduce the purchases of the customers in response to that high price. That is why it is called low price elasticity. So when there are two markets where one market is having a high price elasticity, another market is having a low price elasticity, then monopolist will charge a higher price in that market where the price elasticity is low, and he will charge lesser price in such market where the price elasticity is high. That is what is price discrimination. He is not charging same price for both the markets, so we call it price discrimination. And another practical condition is that it should not be possible for the buyers of low priced market to resell the product to the buyers of high priced market. That means there should not be any market arbitrage. Customers themselves cannot buy in a low priced market and sell it or send it to high priced markets. Of course, should not be possible means individual level anything is possible. This should not be possible at a structured level. Earlier days, nowadays though almost Apple phones are available in India also abundantly. But earlier, say 3-4 years back or 5 years back, when the Apple mobiles were so expensive in India, a lot of people used to bring Apple mobiles from America, from US and other countries. And that used to come with a locked version, means already the service provider in America would have been having his imprint on that phone. So a lot of people used to bring Apple phones from America and used to give those phones to their family members in India. And there is a separate segment, illegal segment of unlocking those Apple phones. I used to see these banners. We will unlock the Apple phones here. Illegal, but chalta hai, India. It's okay. But that is at an individual level, right? If there is a separate company which brings Apple phones from America, buys at cheaper price and dumps them at a lower price in India, where Apple is already having higher price, then that will not create a situation of price discrimination for the monopolist. So there should not be such facility. Individual level, practically it is okay. But there should not be a structured market arbitrage. Arbitrage means a process where two different prices in two different markets is taken advantage of. That is called arbitrage. That arbitrage should not be possible in case of price discrimination. If it is possible, what the monopolist will do? He cannot do anything. People will slowly buy all the products at a lower priced market and sell them at higher priced market very easily. It should not be that easy. It should not be possible for the buyers in order to exist, in order for the price discrimination to exist. That is about price discrimination conditions, very, very important conditions. Now coming to the charging of prices in different markets, how it will be. We can see this with a numerical example. Let us say a single monopoly price is 30 rupees and elasticities of the markets in A and B are 2 and 5. Then what? You know the formula already. Marginal revenue is equal to average revenue into E minus 1 by E. Substitute that. Average revenue is 30. That is 30. So 30 into, in first market A, 2 was the E, elasticity of demand was 2. Substitute in that. 2 minus 1 by 2. That is 1 by 2. That means 1 by 2 of 30, 15 is the marginal revenue in market A. And marginal revenue in market B is how much? Same formula. Average revenue is same 30. But here E is different. E is 5 here. So 5 minus 1 by 5. That means 4 by 5. 30 into 4 by 5. That will be 24. So marginal revenue in market A is 15, marginal revenue in market B is 24. If he charges the same price of 30, so is it a good strategy to get only a marginal revenue of 15 in market A? Doesn't make sense. He's getting more marginal revenue of 24 in market B, but getting only 15 rupees marginal revenue in market A if he charges 30 rupees price. So what he should do ideally here? He should charge more price from market A, because price elasticity of demand is less there. Imagine if he charges 50 rupees, just for understanding. Then marginal revenue in market A also will be 25, which is better than earlier marginal revenue. So in those markets, in this example A, where the price elasticity of demand is relatively lower, he cannot charge the same price that he charges in other markets where the price elasticity of demand is higher. So ideally 30 rupees charged in market B is okay, but 30 rupees charged in market A is not a correct strategy. That should be more than 30 rupees for sure. How much, that monopolist will decide. That is a point here to be noted when we look at price discrimination. So if he charges only 30 rupees, he is losing actually around 9 rupees of revenue, if at all. He is charging only 30 rupees. So what he should do? He should definitely transfer some of the units from market A to market B. In other words, he should sell less units in market A and sell more units in market B if 30 rupees is the price. Because marginal revenue in market B is high, better to shift there. So naturally what happens? When supply in the market A has reduced because of that, the price of the product in market A will slowly increase and it will be more than 30, so that the final monopolist can maximize his profits. So the point is, when monopolist is charging different prices in the different market, simply the conclusion is same. When monopolist charges the different prices, higher price in market A with lower elasticity of demand, lower price in market B with higher elasticity of demand is what is the correct strategy. And when there is market A with lower price elasticity of demand, either he should shift some units from market A to market B where he is getting more marginal revenue, or he should increase the price in market A more than 30. One of them he has to do. In both of the cases, the price ultimately reasonably will increase in market A. Both markets charging 30 rupees is not definitely a correct strategy. He should discriminate these two markets in the form of price. Of course, why the price discrimination is followed by the monopolists? Many reasons could be there. We don't have to look into their brains and check them, but in general we can understand them. To earn maximum profit, to dispose of surplus stock sometimes, enjoy the economies of scale, and to operate in foreign markets and capture them, and to secure equity through pricing. Equity in the sense fairness. Like rich market also, poor market also, if you charge the same price, that is not fair. That is not equity. Equity here is not about equity, share capital and all. Equity means equalness, justice. Equity, justice, fairness. That fairness here, not fair and lovely fairness. That is just means justice la just. Equity means equality. Not equality exactly, but some bit of equilibrium has to be maintained between the different markets. So that is discrimination. So discrimination is good, not bad, because poor people should be charged less and rich people should be charged more, is what generally justice is all about. So that is about reasons for price discrimination. Different reasons could be there. Reasons could be completely different from one particular monopolist to another monopolist, no doubt. And the differences could be also due to differences in income levels, age, size of the purchase, time of purchase. Like this, any differences can be there, because of which price discrimination is possible. Look at this classification of price discrimination, very important classification. Exam questions will come. Professor Pigot has classified, that name also you should remember, Pigot has classified 3 degrees of price discrimination. What are those 3 degrees? Let us see that. Under the first degree price discrimination, the monopolist separates the market into individual consumer and charges them the price they are willing and able to pay, and extract the entire consumer surplus. Ultimately, the consumer surplus should be almost extinct by the monopolist. He will take out the entire consumer surplus and charge that much price individually. That is called first degree of price discrimination. Most of the professionals will do that. Lawyers, doctors, consultants, they charge different fees. Why is that? Because some of the clients may be able to pay more and some of the clients may not be able to pay more. Those who are able to pay more, you should collect more from them. Definitely, that is not wrong when we look at the commercial nature of the profession. So charging different fees is common, and that can be decided even with negotiations, auctions or bid and offer system, whatever. But these are all examples of first degree price discrimination. Individual consumer is discriminated. Again, discrimination here is not a wrong word. That is what monopolists do. That is what anybody who has control on the market, control on their consumers will do. And that is what is fair and just also in some cases. In some cases it may not be fair. That again is reality. So what we are looking at is theory of it. Theoretically, price discrimination is common for monopolists, and first degree price discrimination happens particularly for professionals, where they will charge different prices from different individual consumers. That is first degree price discrimination. Second degree price discrimination is different. Here, different prices are charged for different quantities of whatever goods which are sold. Here, depending upon the quantity, the price will be determined. In other words, big quantities are available at lower price. Naturally. As an example of that, a family pack of soaps or biscuits will be costing less per kg than the smaller packs, naturally. And each consumer pays a different price for consecutive purchases. For example, particularly electricity, you can take it. Electricity, if the consumption exceeds a particular limit, then the charges will be higher. Is it true for electricity or not? Up to certain units, the charges are different. Once the consumption exceeds that limit, then the charges could be higher. What type of price discrimination is that? It is not from one consumer to another consumer. It is for the same consumer, but depending upon the different quantities of goods or services which are sold. So, same consumer may pay different prices also, depending upon how much he consumes. Simply speaking, large quantities are available at lower prices, smaller quantities are available at higher prices. That is called second degree of price discrimination. First degree is a personal level, one-to-one, individual, consumer level price discrimination. Second one is quantity based price discrimination. That is called second degree price discrimination. Then the third degree price discrimination is what we are looking at, like Toyota example, depending upon the location of the customer or the consumer segment. In this case, third degree of price discrimination, the monopolist will divide the consumers into separate sub-markets. Like Toyota, for example, will consider India as a separate market. Same prices what it charges in other countries, it will not charge in India. It will discriminate the prices. On the basis of location, that discrimination happens, or even by customer segment also the discrimination can happen. Customer segmentation is one more part. Let us say lower prices are there in railways for senior citizens. That's a different customer segment. That customer segment enjoys lower prices, and another customer segment can have higher prices. Like that. So, charging different prices for domestic and commercial uses is another example. So, some of the third degree price discriminations are particularly related to location or customer segment. Second degree price discrimination is about quantities of the goods or services purchased and sold. First degree price discrimination is about individual consumers. Through negotiations, the price discrimination will be exerted on individual consumers. That's what is price discrimination. Now, how to arrive at equilibrium under price discrimination conditions? Of course, when monopolist charges different prices in different sub-markets, he has to divide the total market into various sub-markets. On what basis? on the basis of differences in their elasticity of demand. For convenience purposes, let us divide them into only two submarkets. There may be many submarkets in reality. We cannot draw all of them. We don't need to also. Only for understanding theory, let us stick to two submarkets, only two. So, to arrive at equilibrium position, what the monopolist has to ask himself and take a decision on the questions. First one is, how much of the output should be produced by him? And most importantly, how this output should be distributed between the two submarkets? And what prices should be charged in these two submarkets? Totally how much you should produce is a production decision. Second one is, out of the total amount of goods produced, how much should be sold in market A and market B? Let us call them market A, market B. And third is, how much price should be charged in market A and market B? So, ultimately, he has to take decisions related to them. And we know this already, nothing new here, what we already discussed. Same principle will apply here. Wherever he has two different markets, he will charge lower price in a market where the elasticity of demand is high, and he will charge higher price in a market where the elasticity of demand is low. That you can observe from these graphs, and the same example earlier taken also you can understand from the same example. Let us say submarket A is there and B is there. Only look at them first. Which market is having high elasticity of demand? By looking at the demand curve, dA is the demand curve of A, dB is the demand curve of B. By looking at that, you should understand which market is having high price elasticity. B is having high price elasticity, whereas A is having low price elasticity of demand. So that is first point to be noted. When there is low price elasticity, what the monopolist is doing, he is charging a price of P1. Where is the high price elasticity, he is charging a price of P2. And naturally, if you observe, P1 is much higher than P2. Why is he charging higher price? Because elasticity of demand in market A is lesser. That's what happens. And ultimately, what is the profit that he is making is given in the total of both the markets. And aggregate demand curve, if you draw it, it is drawn there, you don't need to draw all these things. And when you have the average marginal cost curve cutting the marginal revenue curve, naturally that is where the equilibrium point will arise. And this is the total quantity of OM that he will produce. Out of that, OM1 he will sell in market A, OM2 he will sell in market B. That means sum of OM1 plus OM2 is equal to OM. That is the total production and sales that he will do. Once again, using the same formula where the marginal cost line is cutting the marginal revenue line from the below at point E. But the point is here, he is not charging same prices in both the markets, he is charging different prices, and at this level he is making a profit of BCE. That is the total profit the monopolist can make by discriminating the prices. So the concept of price discrimination is very simple. If you take only two markets, he will distinguish or discriminate these two markets on the basis of price elasticity of demand, and wherever the price elasticity of demand is low, he will charge a high price. Where price elasticity of demand is high, he will charge low price, and he will sell more in market B. OM2, if you observe, is higher than OM. He will sell less number of quantities in market A, he will sell more number of quantities in market B, so that he maximizes his profit using the concept of price discrimination. That's it. That is about price discrimination of monopolist. And what are the various criticisms of monopoly? You can generally go through them. What are the criticism related to monopoly? We already looked at them as part of the discussion, but this can be generally observed also. What are those things? Because they reduce the aggregate economic welfare, and they will not produce as much they can produce, because they try to curb the market and control the market in their hands, and sometimes they may operate at suboptimal levels. That is one of the problems with monopoly. That means the productive and allocative efficiency will be lower in monopoly. and naturally the monopolist can charge substantially higher prices and produce lower levels of output than would be produced if there was competition. And monopolist can earn economic profits in the long run which is unjustifiable. He'll get supernormal profits, positive economic profits in the long run. Perfect competition, it is not possible. Not possible, but that is possible in monopoly, which is not justifiable. They should get normal profits, not supernormal profits. But monopolists enjoy that supernormal profits, which is unjustified from a social point of view. And monopolist prices will exceed the marginal costs, and naturally they will reduce the consumer surplus. Completely they will squeeze the consumer surplus completely, and that basically is what income is transferred from consumers to monopolist. That means wealth distribution, income distribution in the society will be in a very biased manner. The consumers will pay high prices, and on the other hand there is no substitute goods also. There is no reasonably priced alternative also. The consumers are, one way we can say, forced to buy the products or services from the monopolist, which is once again not fair, which is against the basic concept of consumer sovereignty related to the market economies. So in market economies, a perfectly or a good market economy, monopoly should not be allowed. It should not be permitted by the governments. And monopolists will sometimes use unjust measures, illegal also sometimes, and sometimes though legal but unjust measures, by creating barriers to entry so that they sustain their monopoly power. They will not let the competition to enter into the market, and they spend huge amount of money to maintain their monopoly position. So what happens? That increases the average total cost of producing a product, and new firms will not be able to produce that same product at that average total cost because of lesser scale, and monopolists being enjoying bigger scales of economies of scale, they will be able to sell and get more market power, and they will be able to be highly competitive in their pricing rather than a new player. That is one more unfair thing. See, monopoly itself is unfair. Why is it unfair? You tell 10 reasons or 45 reasons, doesn't matter. And monopolist will have a lot of financial resources, so he is in a powerful position to influence the political process. This is the practical reality. Almost everywhere in the world, monopolists will have a lot of influence in the political process, so that they will get favorable legislation. Whatever they want, they will get it passed in the parliaments, and use that legal power to further increase their monopolistic power. And because they are already monopolists and already have a lot of profits, they have very less incentive for introducing innovations. That means they will not be interested in improving the product quality or reducing the product cost, because they are already in a comfortable position. When you are already in a comfortable position, there is no innovation. As the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of innovation. Monopolist does not need to innovate, because anyway there is nobody to fight with him or compete with him. So why should he innovate? He will not innovate. That is not good for the society also at a in a long-term point of view. And they will be able to use their monopoly power to pay lower prices to their suppliers, because they are big organizations. Their suppliers could be small organizations. So they may even exploit the suppliers also, consumers also, society also, government also. Everybody will be under the clutches of monopolist if monopolist will have that much control and power on the market, which is not a suggestible thing for any society or economy. And economy is also likely to suffer from the inefficiency, because when monopolist is operating inefficiently, naturally the economy also will be suffering because of that inefficiency. Why? Because competition is limited or absent. There is no efficiency that can improve. When competition is there, people will compete with each other and improve by learning from others, and with a vigor of beating the others also, at least that competition will improve efficiency. But without such competition, monopoly will create a lot of inefficiencies, and because of that the economy is also likely to suffer. That is another point which is negative or limitations, we can say, of monopoly. All bad points only related to monopoly. But yes, is not our job to judge it. Our job is to only know what are its features and how price is determined in that, how quantity is determined in that, and how the price discrimination concept works in monopoly, and what are the reasons for price discrimination, what could be the reasons, and what could be the negative points of monopoly or limitations of monopoly. Simply speaking, monopolies are exploitative and they generate undesirable outcomes, naturally, yes, because of which generally governments regulate the formation of monopolies, they prevent the formation of monopolies. Every country has their own acts. India has Competition Act, US has antitrust laws, like that. Many countries have their own laws and regulations, statutes to try to prevent monopolies. So that is about the various aspects related to a market structure called as monopoly. So far we have discussed about perfect competition, which is on one extreme, and monopoly, which is on another extreme. Practically speaking, both are not really possible to be existing in real life, because such perfect competition also we cannot see, that absolute monopoly also we cannot see. Both are not possible. Somewhere in between they will be. Those are all imperfect competitions, and we will discuss them also in the upcoming classes. The remaining market structures, as far as determination of prices and units of organizations to maximize their profits under different market structures is concerned, the logic of determining them is same. Only the shape of the graph will differ, and some of the unique features of each market will definitely have their own role to play. So in case of perfect competition, in the long run, no firm will be able to make supernormal profits, but in case of monopoly, they can make supernormal profits in the long run also. That is the difference. The graphs are different only to the extent of revenue curves. In case of perfect competition, revenue curves were horizontal to x-axis. In case of monopoly, the revenue curves were going sloping downwards from left to right. That difference is there. But the core principles on the basis of which the equilibrium price and quantity are determined, that is still the same. That is what? Where the marginal cost line cuts the marginal revenue line from the below, that is a quantity which is equilibrium quantity. That's it. And price, as we know already, has to be also determined on the basis of the equilibrium quantity. Once you have achieved that equilibrium quantity, whatever is the price, that is average revenue line, that will be the price at which the monopolist will sell. So the concept of determining equilibrium quantity and price is same. Particularly quantity is same. Price, of course, in case of perfect competition will be not determined by the player but by the market. In case of monopoly, that can be determined by the monopolist himself. And other differences, uniqueness is there. Particularly in case of monopoly, there is a possibility of price discrimination, which is not a possibility for other types of market structures. So price discrimination is a very important concept as part of discussing this market structure called monopoly. And in the next sessions, we'll discuss about other market structures, namely monopolistic competition and oligopoly. With that, we can conclude the discussion of price determination and equilibrium quantity determination under different market structures. On one extreme, perfect competition, on other extreme, monopoly. Somewhere in between these two, monopolistic competition and oligopoly. First two we have discussed already, the other two we'll discuss in the upcoming classes. Till then, take care, bye bye, thank you very much.